All right.
Okay.
Oh, boy.
Well, hi. I'm Larry.
And I am Kevin. And we're doing a podcast this week, Stuff and Things. And let's give another moment of silence to Phil.
He has to work.
And all right, that's good enough.
Okay.
So Larry had some interesting questions come up this week.
I did. I was thinking about community, and I was trying to figure out, what does it mean to people? What does it mean today? Is it the same thing it used to mean? And then I had a secondary question about whether a group of friends comprise a community, or whether community is something other than, or more than, or less than just your group of friends.
Cool. So where do you want to start with all that? It's a lot to digest.
I was hoping you would start by picking one.
Yes.
And then, since it's a real question on my part, I don't know the answer, I was hoping you had it.
All right. So for me, I think there's two major sides of community. There's the side that everyone's looking for, and then there's the side that everyone wants. What I mean by that is that everyone's looking for a community. Everyone wants to be involved in a community. Everyone needs people. That's one side of it. And then everyone's searching for something is the other side. And generally you don't find what you're searching for. So then you get into the aspect of where people try to create their own community, which oftentimes fails in their overall goal, I think, because it involves people. And as much as I want Larry to be how I want to conform Larry to be, Larry's still going to be Larry.
Yeah.
I'm still going to be me, no matter how much Larry wants me to be something else. And so I think it's good to strive toward an idea, but to actually find that idea, I don't think is the goal.
Okay, so seems to me you said three important things to the discussion. One is that people need people.
Yes.
I think that's probably worth clarifying and exploring a little bit. And that people are looking or searching for a community, but that they usually don't find it. And so I'm kind of wondering if that's a cynical thing or an observation or whatever. So let's do the first one first.
Okay.
So people need people.
People need people.
Make a case that people need people.
People were created for a relationship. And so whether you believe in God or not, I think Larry and I both would say that God is real and He created us for that. Whether you believe in that or not, I think anywhere you look in civilization, people will be drawn to other people. Of course, you'll get the outliers, the man in the woods by himself. But generally speaking, me as a person, I need people in a community. Otherwise, I become stagnant. The populace as a general becomes stagnant. Anarchy in the bad way, not like the good way we were talking about last time, happens. And so people are drawn to people. We need that interaction. Otherwise, we lose it, so to speak. So
I would agree. I would thinking about it here and listening to you, I would think that there's ample evidence whether a person wants to believe in God or a spiritual force, or what was it Phil called that? The context of the question or something like that.
Something
I'm
like
not
that.
exactly sure. But there's just ample evidence. There are things that are built into us, the ability to communicate, that really doesn't reach anything near its full potential if there's not somebody to communicate with.
Right.
Concept like love, any sort of sense of fellowship, friendship, those are all built around it. And I agree with you, there can be a general exception to the rule, but it seems the rule is that people want to be with people. So I do think that it's okay for us to say in the discussion of what's up with community that people need people.
Yes. I think underlying everything else that is truth.
Yeah.
For like, if you dropped off people randomly on a deserted island and you didn't tell them, they would try to gravitate. And as soon as they found somebody, they would stay with that person. They generally want it.
And there would be a sense of accomplishment, a celebration of it or something, because it's a draw. Yeah.
You wouldn't just see that person and then, well, there's a person, I'm going to go somewhere else now.
Yeah.
You would generally stick together.
And since, we're not hiding the fact that we believe that God is one of the reasons behind that, you can go back to the beginning, the book of Genesis, and the first not good that was talked about is that it's not good to be alone.
Right.
And I think a lot of people's sad lives prove that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think people that aren't in that kind of like community or whatever, we're going to keep using that word community, or people aren't with people, or isolated, are generally the people that are more depressed or are lonely, as you say, which causes a lot of different mental angst.
And the kind of anxiety that you run into when you're with people, the frustration, people not matching your standards or meeting up to what your expectations are, those are a different set and they're real. But I don't think that they are the same as that sense of isolation and aloneness.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so then if people need people,
Yes.
and we're going to work on that assumption, listeners can comment and make a case the other way if they want. But then what are we talking about when we talk about community? Because you just mentioned, we keep using that word. So what is community?
Right. I think ideally, community would be a group of people that strive toward a common goal. So you can have different forms of community. I have a work community. We're all striving toward doing our work. I have a church community. We're all striving toward learning what we believe in God. A family community where the family aspects interchange. So I think, generally speaking,
those are fun a lot of times, huh? Family communities.
They can be.
All of them can be, really.
Yes. So I think, it's a group of people striving toward a common goal, generally speaking.
I'm going to look up a definition of community. I did it one time. It kind of is part of thinking about what's going on with church. And so let me do that. Because I think even the general definition of it is what you said. It has to do with a common cause. But let's see what Google says. A group of people living in the same place or having particular characteristics in common.
Right. So I think I would speak more to societal community.
It looks like it.
So your neighborhood, you're all living in the same place type of thing.
Here's the second definition. That first one uses an example of like the scientific community. So I think you're right. It's like a definition of a community from the outside based on a common characteristic. The second definition is a feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. And I think that's the one that you were talking about.
Right.
So I do think that's a legitimate definition of it.
So I think they're both good definitions from Google, but one's looking from the outside in. I think we're more talking about from the inside
out. Because it's the response to that drivenness of needing people and not being alone. So what kind of group of people can constitute a community? It deserve to be called a community is kind of what I'm saying. Because you'd mentioned community, family, community work, community of church, shared interest. So like you got a soccer team that you play in.
Right.
And that's a part of the league. Is the league part of the community? Is the team the community? How do you relate to that gathering of people with a common interest?
I would say, from our definition, it'd be the team would be the community more, and then in this example, the league would be more the society.
Okay. So there's a connecting aspect of belonging to the league.
Right.
But it doesn't fulfill the need to connect with individuals.
Right.
As a part of a community. I remember I was thinking back to when I went to Europe one time. And it's so weird. I was on the bus and there were some people from Texas and I was from California. But we felt so close. We felt like neighbors because of where we were.
Right.
We were in Europe from America. And I would never have even given that person a second thought if we had just been passing, someplace here in the States. But because we were in, so I wonder what kind of influence the context, the location, time, what do those things have to do on defining a community?
Yeah, community changes all the time because people are always going to different people. So you're going to Europe is a more drastic example, I would say. But even this morning, I was coaching a team. So I was a part of that community. Mm-hmm. Now that I'm not with them, they're still like a community, but it's not like the community has to stay firm forever. It kind of is disbanded until we get back together again. Right. And so now I'm with you. I don't know if I'd necessarily constitute two people as a community
Yeah, I know,
necessarily.
I'm thinking about that too.
But if we had a few more people here, then it'd be I stepped out of one community into another. So I don't know if that answered your question or
Yeah,
not.
no.
But
We're just talking about stuff.
yeah, and things.
So one of my questions was, and you mentioned it, that people seek community. Is community an easier thing to find and experience today? Okay, like one of the obvious things we should probably talk about is, does social media actually provide a community?
No, and it can.
This is a tough question. I think it's a big one in our culture.
I think it can provide a community. I think that it is a very good imitator, though. People go there seeking it, but they don't find what they're looking for.
Yeah, a lot of times.
Most of the time, I would say. And so, the underlying principle of social media should be community-based, meaning you're checking to see what people are doing so you can go hang out with them or whatever. But I think we have taken that way too far and tried to substitute the social media platform as the community rather than the people involved in the social media.
Is actual human contact or interaction necessary to be a community?
Yes, I think so.
And so social media does offer us a chance to have the appearance of a community. We can even call them friends.
Right.
You know, like Facebook friends, without actually having genuine interaction.
Yeah.
And so is that what you mean by the promise of community not delivering?
Right. Yeah, there's no actual yeah, that's a good way to put it. There's no interaction between people on it. So it imitates. You go on there thinking that you're going to find that interaction. And you even sometimes feel like you're getting that interaction, like 500 people like my photo or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no actual interaction. Like, you don't get to talk to that person about it. You don't get to experience anything with that person. It's just a simple, fast gratification, and then you're always left wanting more, though. Like, okay, if I post another picture, will I get more likes next time? Which is false. And it makes you very inward, which we already discussed is not good.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so what about not social media? What about regular friends? Like just friends in general, friends through school or work or the accumulation of your life. Is having a group of friends automatically having a community, or is it having a community?
That's a loaded question, for sure. Having a group of friends in and of itself, no. But if your group of friends is striving toward a common thing, or having discussion about a common thing, then I would say yes. If you have a common interest, yes. But if I just gathered a group of random friends into a room, I wouldn't necessarily constitute that as a community. Because we all have the group in itself isn't after a common thing. It'd just be a group of random people. Even though they're all my friend, that doesn't mean that is a community in itself.
So is the gathering to share with one another, to enjoy one another, to fellowship with one another, to party with one another, is that enough to constitute a community? Like if you had a bunch of friends that you went fishing with every second Saturday,
right?
And obviously, so the fishing paraphernalia and all that would be there. Or if you had friends that you went and got drunk with every Saturday, would getting drunk be enough of a common interest to call that a community?
At the basis, yeah, I think so. I don't know if it's a healthy community.
Yeah.
But I think that would still be a community because your intent is to do something with people of a common goal or interest.
So you differentiated between a potentially healthy and not healthy community?
Yes.
Is it the people that make it that, or the cause?
Both.
How does a cause? Well,
if your cause is to go get drunk, I'm not saying getting drunk is bad, but generally it lowers your ability to function properly, and people do stupid things.
Yeah.
So that would be not a good cause.
Whereas raising money to help the homeless find shelter might be a more lofty cause.
Yeah. If you're trying to help people, generally, I would consider that more of a healthy community.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you're trying to help yourself, which, going back to the thing of getting drunk, would be trying to help yourself. And
Yeah.
that can lead down a lot of rabbit holes or rabbit trails.
Yeah.
Rabbit trail holes that, like, we don't know exactly, but for instance, gang-related stuff generally involves drugs. Drugs stem from other substances earlier. So these negative community aspect things can go down a very, very unhealthy.
So would you say a gang is a community?
Yes.
I would. And yeah, I see what you mean about both the cause and the people. Because to have a place where you're known, where your name is known, where you're respected, you're appreciated, that could describe a gang.
Right.
What that gang chooses to do as a community can be good or bad or
Right.
somewhere in between.
Definitely.
Okay. So the friendship thing. So a gathering of random friends does satisfy the need to not be alone.
Right.
Sort of. Probably.
Yeah.
But may or may not be legitimately identified as a community.
Right.
How big can a community be before it's something else?
That's a good question. I think it can get fairly large, like a community of fans at a sporting event.
Uh-huh.
You're talking like 40,000 people. You know, that there's still a community. They're all there for the same reason. They want to see their team win.
Right. And they're interacting over it. They're tailgating. They're wearing the same colors.
So it could be fairly large before I would constitute it as something else, but it could also be really small and still constitute it as a community. So I don't know.
How small do you think it could be? Because you'd mentioned, I don't know if I called two people that, but I kind of agree with you. I mean, obviously, using your illustration is if you found yourself on a desert island, to find one other person would go a long way to supplying the need for community.
Definitely.
So it's probably not that you can't just do it with two, but there's something special about three or more people sharing ideas and stuff.
I feel like in a societal aspect, not a desert island aspect, it'd have to be like three or more, generally.
When I asked the question, I was thinking that a group of friends just didn't necessarily constitute a community. And I do think it's because of that common interest. Because I have a vision of a group of friends meeting and then dispersing and there being nothing shared in common besides just that one gathering, I think. But I don't know about that. I'm open to a different thought on that.
And I think a lot of these things can overlap. Like, I have a college group that I would consider a community, but I also work with a few of them. That's a different.
I see.
That's a different layer. So
your community groups intersect.
Yeah, so there can be overlap. Mm-hmm. So if you brought a group of random people together for a cause, like you're saying, even when they disperse, they could still have overlapping things, but that doesn't mean that everything and everyone's life will overlap.
Mm-hmm.
Like my college group, some of them have different religious beliefs than me, so it's not going to quite overlap with my religious community.
Right.
None of them really play sports, so there's no overlap there at all. I'm the only one that does that. Yeah. So I have a different community for that. But there are a lot of things that do overlap within those communities.
Sure. Well, any other questions that would help us ponder in the right direction about the importance of community or what it is, or how do you recognize when you're in one?
How do you recognize when you're in one? I don't know. What do you think?
I'm wondering if it doesn't provoke you to make a place to interact in that community.
Right.
Like, you know, if one person has got their calendar out, they're scheduling events for their friends to get together, and they hear about a concert or something that they think their friends might like, and so they're the ones that shoot it all out to everybody and say, hey, we can go, you know, whatever. Seems to me that those people are being driven a little bit by community.
Right.
in a different way than the person who's just getting those things, and aside from not being reminded of it, would never occur to them to get together.
Right.
So is that community and not community? Is it community thinking and not community thinking? Or is it this person's getting kind of the free benefit of being in a community without giving very much to it?
That's a good. So I would think that the people that are reaching out would be more of the fire starters, so to speak.
Yeah.
The ones that want to drive a specific aspect of that community.
Yeah. There's a phrase that gets used, community spirited, or community minded.
Right.
I think that person might be described as that.
Yeah.
A little bit more. Okay, so here's my old fogey question. It seems to me that we are in an era where certain things are not common that used to be common. So like block parties, neighborhood parties, community events like dances or festivals or parades. We still have them. But do you think that society is more individualistic and less community oriented now than it was in the past?
Definitely. I think a lot of that stems from the false nature that we talked about with the social media platform.
It fills the initial need for community without requiring.
And I think we'll really start to see more ramification of that. I think we're already seeing a lot of that where there's just so much division across people, and it's because they don't talk to their neighbors anymore. They just listen to a soapbox that tells them what to think. So, yeah, I think that the interaction part definitely is just dwindling very, very rapidly.
Yeah. I do think community is important, and I think we suffer when we substitute other things for it.
Yeah.
Or we get so busy that we lose touch with our community. Kind of a downer.
Yeah. And I think last thoughts for me is that while we need people to want to build community, I think we need people more to plug into communities that already exist, because building a new community always makes more separation. In terms of, I'll use the church example because I think that's an easy one.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like your ideas, so I'm going to go make my own thing, and then that just creates more separation.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of, I might not agree 100% with what you're saying, but how can I plug in and at least have communication within that sphere? Because that doesn't create separation.
Right. Okay, I can see that, but then what about the other side of the coin where you live in a context, in a place where there's a big void?
Right. I think, if there's actual void there, go ahead and create. But if you're only doing it
through separation,
no, I don't think it's good.
Yeah, like your fishing community.
Right.
It's not 100% necessary that the lure fishermen and the fly fishermen and the spin fishermen separate.
Right.
Even though there may be separate interests, they could still benefit from being a bigger community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just encourage everybody to think about community, which ones you're in. Are they important to you? Are you important to them? It's funny. I think Woody Allen said something about church, and he was kind of talking about the community. He said, I would never go to a church that let me in. And so there's all kinds of ways you can look at your role in a community. I just would encourage all of us to think about it a little bit and be more open to the fact that we need people, and that community is one that needs satisfied.
Definitely. Cool.
Yeah. That wasn't bad.